I'll never forget the sound. A sharp zap followed by a thud that rattled the cul-de-sac. It was a Thursday afternoon, April 10th, 2025, and I just pulled my beat-up Ford F-150 into the driveway of my mom's house in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was still in my accountant disguise. Khakis, a polo shirt, and glasses I didn't need when I saw it. My 68-year-old mother, Margaret Donovan, sprawled out on her front lawn, twitching like she just hugged a live wire. Her hands clutched her swollen belly. She's 8 months pregnant. A late-life miracle courtesy of IVF and sheer stubbornness. Standing over her, triumphant as a dictator at a ribbon cutting, was Karen Pritchard, the HOA president from hell, taser still smoking in her hand. Unauthorized Flora, Karen barked, her voice nasal enough to wake a coma patient. She waved a crumpled HOA violation notice like it was the Declaration of Independence. Bylaw 17.3 Margaret. No vegetation over 12 inches without prior approval. You've been warned. I bolted from the truck, my heart slamming against my ribs. What the hell, Karen? I yelled, dropping to my knees beside Mom. She was breathing, thank God, but her face was a mix of fury and shock. Her gray curls plastered to her forehead with sweat. The air smelled of ozone and fresh dirt. Her prized tomato plants uprooted and strewn across the grass like casualties of war. Karen adjusted her visor, bright orange, like a traffic cone, and smirked. Jack, your mother's a menace. This garden of hers is a blight on Pinewood Estates. I had no choice. She tapped the taser against her clipboard for emphasis, her eyes gleaming with the kind of glee you'd expect from someone who alphabetizes their spice rack. No choice, I growled, helping Mom sit up. She's pregnant, you lunatic. You tasered a senior citizen over tomatoes? My hands shook. Not from fear, but from the kind of rage that makes you want to flip a table or, in my case, call in a favor from the Raleigh field office. But I couldn't. Not yet. See, I'm Jack Donovan, JD to my buddies, but to the world, I'm just a numbers guy. In reality, I'm an undercover FBI director, 48 years old, graying at the temples, and way too deep in a fraud case to blow my cover over an HOA tyrant. At least, that's what I told myself as I stared daggers at Karen. Mom coughed, brushing dirt off her floral muumuu. Jack, I'm fine. She's the one who's gonna regret this. I'd have taken her down myself if I wasn't hauling this kid around. She patted her belly, defiant as ever. That's Margaret Donovan for you. 5'2" of pure grit, the kind of woman who'd survived 2 husbands, a house fire, and now, apparently, a 50,000-volt gardening dispute. Karen scoffed, scribbling something on her clipboard. You're lucky I didn't call the cops, Margaret. This is your 3rd violation this month. First, the unapproved bird feeder, then that hideous wind chime. It's not hideous, it's artisanal, Mom snapped, her voice cutting through the suburban silence. And now this jungle. Karen gestured at the tomato carnage, oblivious to the neighbors peeking through their blinds. Old Mr. Henderson across the street shook his head, muttering into his coffee mug. Mrs. Lopez next door filmed the whole thing on her phone, probably live-streaming it to her bingo group. Pinewood Estates was a powder keg of gossip, and Karen had just lit the match. I stood, towering over her, 6'1" against her 5'0" frame. You're out of your mind, Karen. This ends now. Apologize, or what, Jack? She sneered, stepping closer, taser still in hand. You'll file a complaint? Good luck. I've got the HOA board, the bylaws, and a lawyer who says I'm within my rights. Private property doesn't mean squat when you sign the covenant. She turned on her heel, her sensible loafers squishing in the mud, and strutted back to her golf cart parked at the curb. You've got 24 hours to remove this mess, or the fines double. As her cart whirred away, I helped Mom to her feet, my mind racing. I'd seen a lot in my career, drug lords, money launderers, even a guy who tried to bribe me with a live alligator. But this was personal. Karen didn't know who she was messing with, and I wasn't about to let some clipboard-wielding psycho-taser my family into submission. But I had to play it smart. Blowing my cover could tank a 2-year investigation into a fraud ring tied to half the state's elites. Still, standing there, fists clenched, I wondered how this petty tyrant got the nerve. What do you think happens when a control freak picks the wrong fight? Drop your predictions in the comments. I'm dying to hear what you'd do next. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called 911. Mom dusted herself off, muttering about planting more tomatoes just to spite Karen. She thinks she's won, she said, a wicked glint in her eye. She's got no idea what's coming. Neither do you, I replied under my breath, already plotting. The sun dipped low over Pinewood Estates, casting long shadows across the wrecked garden. Karen had started this war, but I'd finish it quietly, legally, and with a hell of a lot more firepower than a taser. One way or another, she'd learn. You don't mess with a Donovan. 2 days later, Karen showed up with a lawyer and a court order. Turns out, she'd sued my mom for emotional distress over the tomatoes. I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee strong enough to wake a corpse, when I heard the golf cart's whine pull up to our curb. It was Saturday, April 12, 2025, and Pinewood Estates was still buzzing from the taser incident. Neighbors whispering, kids reenacting it with Nerf guns. I peeked through the blinds and saw her. Karen Pritchard, clipboard in one hand, taser holstered like she was Dirty Harry, and a weaselly guy in a cheap suit clutching a briefcase. Mom, still sore but unbowed, was on the couch, plotting her next move over a cup of chamomile tea. Jack, she called, her voice sharp as a tack. That witch is back. Get out here. I stepped onto the porch just as Karen thrust a stack of papers at me. Jack Donovan, you've been served, she said, her smirk so smug I wanted to wipe it off with a garden hose. Margaret's little stunt Thursday caused me severe psychological harm. My lawyer, Mr. Timmons here, filed an emergency injunction. Your mother's garden comes down, or she's looking at $10,000 in damages, plus legal fees. Mr. Timmons adjusted his tie, polyester, stained with what I hoped was ketchup, and nodded. HOA v. Donovan, 1998 precedent. Rogue begonias. We've got a slam dunk. He sounded like he'd rehearsed it in a mirror, probably while dreaming of a corner office at Strip Mall Law, LLC. I skimmed the court order, my FBI-trained eyes catching the buzzwords, irreparable harm, breach of covenant, immediate remedy. It was nonsense, but Karen had the HOA board in her pocket and enough petty cash to make it stick. You're suing a pregnant woman for growing food? I said, keeping my tone even. That's low, even for you. She's a threat to property values. Karen snapped, jabbing a finger at the tomato wreckage still littering the lawn. This isn't about food. It's about order. She spun to Timmons. Tell him about the meeting. Emergency HOA session tonight, Timmons said, puffing out his chest. 7 p.m., Community Center. Margaret's fines are up for review. Non-compliance could mean eviction. Mom shuffled out, leaning on her cane, more for effect than necessity. Eviction? Over my dead body, you power-tripping harpy. I'll plant a whole damn orchard before you kick me out. Karen's eyes narrowed. Try it, Margaret. I've got the sheriff on speed dial. She and Timmons piled into the golf cart and buzzed off, leaving me with a lawsuit and a headache. Inside, Mom was already scheming. Jack, we fight this. I'm not ripping out my garden for that lunatic. She rubbed her belly, wincing slightly. Taser aftershocks, the doctor said, but she'd refused bed rest. Stubborn as a mule, that's my mom. Easy, Ma, I said, pouring her more tea. I'll handle it. What I didn't say was how. I'd been itching to dig into Karen's reign of terror, and this was my excuse. That night, I slipped into the HOA meeting incognito, baseball cap, hoodie, the works. The community center smelled of stale donuts and desperation, packed with Pinewood's retirees and busybodies. Karen stood at the podium, banging a gavel like she was Judge Judy. Order, she barked. Tonight, we address Margaret Donovan's flagrant disregard for Bylaw 17.3. Unauthorized gardening is a gateway to anarchy. Next it's chickens, then RVs in driveways. The crowd murmured. Some nodded, others rolled their eyes. I spotted Mr. Henderson sipping coffee in the back. looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen ranted for 20 minutes. Fines, $500 and counting, garden demolition, scheduled for Monday, and a vote to explore eviction proceedings. She waved a ledger of HOA violations like it was holy writ. This isn't personal, she lied. It's about standards. I scribbled notes, my gut telling me there was more to her crusade than tomato hatred. Back home, I fired up my laptop FBI grade, encrypted to hell, and pulled Pinewood's HOA records from a public database. Bingo! Karen had fined half the neighborhood into submission over the last year. $200 for non-approved mailbox colors, $150 for excessive holiday lights, even $75 for unauthorized pet noises. Poor Mrs. Lopez's yappy chihuahua. The fines added up, tens of thousands, funneled into an HOA account only Karen controlled. Something stank, and it wasn't just Mom's compost pile. Meanwhile, Mom was on the phone with Mrs. Lopez, rallying the troops. We're not backing down, Rosa. That woman's a dictator with a taser. I smirked, Margaret Donovan, suburban gorilla. But I had bigger plans. Karen didn't know it, but I'd started tailing her that afternoon. Unmarked car, discreet photos. She'd stopped at a hardware store, buying industrial weed killer, then met some shady guy in a parking lot. Cash changed hands. My instincts screamed. This wasn't just about tomatoes. By midnight, I was back in my truck, parked down the street from Karen's McMansion. Her lights were on, her golf cart gleaming in the garage. She thought she'd won round one, but I'd spent 20 years busting crooks smarter than her. This was personal now, and I had the tools to make her regret it. Step 1. Find out what she was hiding. Step 2. Bury her with it. That night, Mom turned her garden into a fortress. Barbed wire, floodlights, and a sign. Taser me again, Karen. It was Sunday, April 13th, 2025, and Pinewood Estates was about to become a battlefield. I'd barely slept, still wired from tailing Karen and digging through HOA records, when I heard the racket. Mom barking orders at Mrs. Lopez and old Mr. Henderson like a drill sergeant. I stepped outside to find her rigging up a contraption that looked like a cross between a deer blind and a militia outpost. The floodlights blazed, casting harsh shadows over the tomato stumps, and the barbed wire, salvaged from Henderson's garage, glinted menacingly. The sign, scrawled in red paint on a plank, was nailed to a stake front and center. Ma, what the hell is this? I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. She stood there in her muumuu, 8 months pregnant and wielding a staple gun like it was a 6-shooter. It's war, Jack, she said, stapling a tarp to a makeshift frame. That which wants my garden gone by tomorrow? Over my cold, taser-fried corpse. Mrs. Lopez nodded, clutching a shovel, while Henderson muttered something about damn HOA Nazis and handed Mom a thermos of coffee. I couldn't argue. Karen's demolition crew was set to roll in Monday morning, per her HOA decree. But this was next level. You're gonna get arrested, I warned, half admiring her guts. Let him try, she grinned, patting her belly. I've got a lawyer on speed dial and a baby on the way. Juries love me. By noon, the neighborhood was split, half cheering Mom's rebellion, half clutching pearls. Mrs. Lopez brought over a boombox, blasting Sweet Home Alabama on loop to taunt Karen, whose McMansion loomed 3 houses down. Kids rode bikes past, gawking at the fortress, while a few retirees joined the cause, hauling lawn chairs and snacks. It was a circus, and Mom was the ringmaster. Then Karen struck back. At 2 p.m., a sheriff's deputy rolled up, lights flashing, with a cease and desist letter thicker than a phone book. Margaret Donovan, he drawled, tipping his hat. This garden's been deemed a public nuisance. HOA's orders. Tear it down or we will. Karen stood behind him, arms crossed, her orange visor practically glowing with spite. Public nuisance? Mom shouted, waving her cane. Tell that to the founding fathers. I've got a right to grow food, the deputy sighed. He looked like he'd rather be fishing, and handed me the paperwork before driving off. Karen stayed, snapping photos with her phone, muttering about evidence. I skimmed the legal jargon about visual blight and community standards. Signed by Timmons, her weasel lawyer. "This is insane," I said, loud enough for her to hear. "You're turning a garden into a federal case. It's about principle, Jack," she sneered, zooming in on the barbed wire. "You'll see who's laughing when the fines hit 6 figures. She strutted off, leaving me with a sinking feeling. She wasn't bluffing. That's when things got ugly. Around dusk, Henderson was hauling a bag of mulch to reinforce Mom's setup when Karen swooped in like a vulture. "Step back, Harold," she barked, taser drawn. "You're aiding and abetting." Before he could drop the bag, zap, 50,000 volts sent the old man sprawling, his coffee thermos rolling into the gutter. Neighbors gasped. Mrs. Lopez screamed. I sprinted over, helping Henderson up as he cursed Karen in words I hadn't heard since my army days. "She's lost it," I growled. Checking his pulse, he was fine, just pissed. Mom stormed out, shaking her fist. "You're a monster, Karen. Taser an old man? I'll bury you in tomatoes." The crowd swelled, phones out, filming the chaos. Karen retreated, but not before yelling, "This isn't over." It was war now, no question. Back inside, I hit my laptop hard. Karen's emails, hacked via an FBI backdoor, don't ask, were a goldmine. She'd been skimming HOA dues, $50K over 2 years, funneled to a maintenance fund that mysteriously bought her a hot tub and a new deck. Receipts, bank transfers, even a smug note to Timmons. "Keep the peasants in line, and we'll cash out big." She wasn't just a tyrant. She was a crook. I leaned back, smirking. This was leverage, but I needed more. Proof that'd stick in court, not just scare her. Monday's demolition loomed, and Mom's guerrilla tactics were buying time. But Karen had the law on her side. For now. I grabbed my keys, slipping into undercover mode. Time to tail her again. Last night's parking lot meetup with that shady guy nagged at me. Cash for what? I'd find out, even if it meant bending a few rules. By midnight, Pinewood was quiet, save for Mom's floodlights and Lynyrd Skynyrd on repeat. She sat in a lawn chair, guarding her fortress, a shotgun across her lap. Unloaded, she swore, but Karen didn't need to know that. "We've got her rattled, Jack," she said, sipping coffee. "Your turn." "Oh, I'm just getting started," I replied, already plotting. Karen thought she held all the cards, but I'd spent decades flipping tables on bigger fish. Tomorrow she'd push harder. Good, I'd be ready. Karen didn't know I'd wired her HOA meeting. Every word of her embezzlement confession, caught on tape. It was Tuesday, April 15th, 2025, and Pinewood Estates was a pressure cooker ready to blow. Mom's garden fortress stood defiant, floodlights blazing, Sweet Home Alabama, still looping like a war anthem. Monday's demolition crew had shown up, 2 guys with a backhoe, but turned tail when Mom brandished her unloaded shotgun and Mrs. Lopez pelted them with overripe tomatoes from her own stash. Karen was livid, and tonight's HOA meeting was her endgame. Crush Mom, bury the rebellion, and keep her hot tub cash flowing. She had no idea I'd rigged the room with a mic smaller than a dime, courtesy of FBI tech I'd borrowed years back. I'd spent Monday night tailing her again. That shady parking lot guy. A contractor named Vince paid $2,000 in cash to accidentally bulldoze Mom's house during the garden demo. Karen's insurance scam to dodge the lawsuit. I had photos, timestamps, and a hunch she'd spill more if cornered. So I leaked her embezzlement docs, bank transfers, hot tub receipts, to the HOA board anonymously via a burner email. By 6 p.m., whispers were spreading. By 7, the community center was packed, tense as a bar outings before a storm. I slipped in, cap low, blending with the crowd, retirees, rebels, and Karen's loyalists. Mom stayed home, guarding her fortress, but Mrs. Lopez and Henderson flanked me, clutching printouts of Karen's financials I'd slipped them. Karen took the podium, gavel banging, her orange visor glinting under the fluorescence. "Tonight," she barked, "we end Margaret Donovan's reign of terror. Fines tripled, $1, $500. Demolitions rescheduled. And eviction proceedings start tomorrow. The room erupted, half cheering, half booing. Henderson waved a bank statement, shouting, "What about the $50,000 you stole? Karen? Where's my mailbox fine money?" Mrs. Lopez chimed in, "Yeah, and my Chihuahua tax." Karen froze, her taser hand twitching, but she recovered fast. "Lies," she screeched. "Slander from garden anarchists." Then she slipped, muttering to Timmons, loud enough for my mic, "If they keep digging, the hot tub's the least of it. Vince'll torch the place and we're golden." Timmons paled, but it was too late. Every word streamed to my phone crystal clear. Time to flip the table. I stood, peeling off my cap, badge in hand. "Karen Pritchard, Jack Donovan, FBI. You're under arrest for embezzlement, conspiracy, and attempted arson." The room gasped. Phones whipped out, filming. I flashed the badge. Overkill, but damn, it felt good. And nodded to Henderson, who hit play on a speaker I'd rigged. Her voice blared, "Vince'll torch the place." Chaos broke loose. Karen lunged, taser drawn, screaming, "This is a tomato conspiracy." I sidestepped, grabbing her wrist. Years of training kicked in, and she flailed, visor flying. "You'll never take me," she wailed as I pinned her arm. Deputies I'd tipped off burst in, off-duty pals from Raleigh PD, cuffing her mid-rant. "The bylaws protect me. I'm the law here." "Not anymore," I said, smirking as they hauled her out. Timmons bolted for the exit, but Mrs. Lopez tripped him with her purse. He face-planted into a folding chair. The crowd roared, half shock, half glee. I flashed back. My undercover gig had me chasing a fraud ring tied to state bigwigs. Karen's petty theft wasn't the main case, but her cash trail linked to Vince, a lowlife I'd flagged months ago. 2 birds, 1 stone. Outside, Karen thrashed in the squad car, still clutching her taser till a deputy pried it loose. "You'll pay, Donovan, my lawyer." The door slammed, cutting her off. I leaned against the building, catching my breath. Mom's garden was safe, Karen was toast, and I'd cracked a bonus lead. Not bad for a week's work. Back home, Mom watched from her porch, sipping tea, shotgun retired. "Told you we'd win, Jack," she said, grinning. The floodlights dimmed. The sign stayed up, a victory trophy. Karen underestimated us, and it cost her everything. Revenge, served cold as a cucumber from Mom's next crop. 3 weeks later, Karen Pritchard was rotting in Wake County lockup. The HOA was dissolved, and Mom's garden was a damn paradise. It was late April 2025, and Pinewood Estates had gone from a taser-fueled war zone to something out of a Norman Rockwell painting, if Rockwell painted pregnant grannies flipping off authority. I leaned on the porch railing, sipping a beer, Budweiser, because I'm a patriot, not a craft brew hipster, watching Mom tend her tomatoes. The barbed wire was gone. The floodlights swapped for solar lanterns, and that sign, "Taser me again, Karen," hung proudly above her new raised beds. She'd turned the yard into a neighborhood co-op. Mrs. Lopez grew peppers, Henderson had his squash, and kids ran around trading zucchini like it was Pokemon cards. Karen's downfall was total. After her meltdown at the HOA meeting on April 15th, the deputies hauled her off, still screaming about bylaws and tomato conspiracies. My mic recording, her confession about embezzling $50,000 and plotting arson with Vince, nailed her coffin shut. The DA charged her with fraud, conspiracy, and assault. Henderson's taser zap finally got some justice. Timmons, her weasel lawyer, flipped faster than a pancake, spilling about her scams to save his own skin. Last I heard, Karen's awaiting trial, her golf cart impounded, her hot tub repossessed. Poetic, right? All that over tomatoes, and a taser-happy nutcase who didn't know who she was messing with. I took a swig, smirking at the memory. That night, I tied up loose ends with the FBI. Vince, her parking lot thug, was a small fry in my bigger case, a fraud ring siphoning millions from state contracts. Karen's cash drops to him were the thread I needed. My bosses were thrilled, even if they didn't love me flashing my badge over a suburban spat. "Donovan," my supervisor grumbled over the phone, "you're lucky this panned out. Next time, stick to the playbook. I just laughed. Playbooks don't cover pregnant moms and rogue HOAs. Mom shuffled over, dirt on her hands, her belly bigger than ever. Jack, these tomatoes are gonna be the best yet. Baby's due in a month. Think I'll name her Victory. She winked, plopping into a lawn chair. At 68, she'd outlasted 2 husbands, a house fire, and now Karen Pritchard. I'd bet on her against Godzilla. Victory Donovan, I said, raising my bottle. Fitz. The garden hummed around us. Bees buzzing, neighbors chatting. Pinewood was free. The HOA bylaws burned in a bonfire Henderson hosted last week. Karen's reign was a bad memory, replaced by something better. Community, grit, and a hell of a story. Looking back, it was almost funny, almost. A control freak with a clipboard and a taser took on a pregnant gardener and an undercover fed. She never stood a chance. I'd spent 20 years busting crooks, but this win felt different, personal. Mom got her garden, I got a lead, and Karen got a cell. Call it a harvest of revenge, ripe and sweet. I set the beer down, glancing at Mom. You think she'll try again if she gets out? Mom snorted. Let her. I've got a new shotgun, loaded this time. She was kidding, probably. I chuckled, picturing Karen's face if she ever rolled back into Pinewood. She'd lost everything. Power, cash, even that damn visor, auctioned off at the sheriff's sale for $5. The sun dipped low, painting the cul-de-sac gold. I thought about retiring, hanging up the badge, trading stakeouts for seedlings. Mom'd love the help, and after this mess, I could use the quiet. Victory'd need an uncle to teach her how to spot a tyrant a mile off. But that was tomorrow's fight. Tonight, we'd won. And that's how we took down the HOA tyrant. If you love this wild ride, smash that like button, share it with your buddies, drop a comment with your own HOA horror stories, and hit subscribe. Don't forget the bell so you never miss the next revenge harvest. I've got a beer and a garden to tend, but I want to hear from you. Ever had a Karen in your life? Tell me below. Here's to sticking it to the petty dictators, one tomato at a time.